Is the adopted dog zoning amendment permit and the animal welfare and rescue facility. And Adam, you want to give us a little update on what's going on there?
Sure. What adopted dog is operating in a residential district as a non-conforming use. There's nothing in our code that allows that type of use. They are asking to build a parking lot that's going to be used by adopted dog and by the modern barn as overflow parking. However, they can't do that because that would be expanding the non-conforming use. So what adopted dog has asked the town to consider is making animal welfare facilities essentially a permitted use in a residential district. And they've submitted draft language to the town, and the planning board has considered that draft language and for the most part agrees with it. I've added some additional conditions to mitigate any potential impacts in residential districts. For instance, adding a requirement that this type of facility be located on state or county road. I don't think the town would want these types of facilities on our local roads. And I also put in there that all non-enclosed buildings, structures, or areas occupied by animals be no closer to 200 feet than any residential structure. We wouldn't necessarily want these facilities on top of a neighbor, a house, because these are permitted in residential districts.
I'll just interrupt for a second. This is going to be on the agenda for next week, but since we're talking about it, what I was reading from is in this document.
Agenda for the work session.
Sorry?
For the work session or for the town board meeting?
To receive at the regular, on the regular agenda, but now you're on what page there?
Right now,
Yeah.
page 2.
It's on the agenda.
Look.
Yes, on yours.
Now, the issue the planning board had the most concern about is what would the maximum floor area ratio. That's how much floor area per the size of the property would be allowed. And what adopted dog is asking for is 0.35 FAR. Now, 0.35 FAR is equivalent to what you permit in a commercial district. And the existing FAR on the property is 0.06. It was my recommendation to the planning board to reduce the maximum permitted FAR to 0.15, which would be about tripling the size of the facility that's there now. The applicant was concerned with that recommendation, and they would like to keep the 0.35 or close to it. The planning board asked that the applicant prepare what they envision on that site, so the town board and the planning board would have a better understanding of why they're requesting such a large FAR. My concern is that's quite a bit of FAR in the residential district.
Is there any prohibition here against veterinarian activities?
There is no prohibition on it, but it would have to be associated with the rescue facility. I don't think it would be like a public clinic, if that's what your concern is. And if that is your concern, we can be explicit about that.
I've actually was involved many years ago with a situation where there was a veterinary office in a residential area,
Okay.
and they had people bringing dogs that were hit by cars in the middle of the night. It was quite a disturbance
Well,
to them.
Okay, yeah, I don't know if that would be prohibited. I think they are going to be taking in animals. I don't know, we have to ask them whether or not they're going to be treating injured animals, and I don't know the answer to that.
But can you clarify for me, what are they trying to do here? I thought this was about the parking for
It is.
modern farm. Isn't there a better way to do that than to amend?
Yeah, I'm a little worried about changing the whole zoning to get this parking lot done for them. Can we just do a special use or something specific for their use because
Well,
they are
they're not permitted there, so you
I know.
can't do that. There is a provision in the code, Roland, that talks about certain situations where you're allowed to expand a non-conforming use. Do you know what section I'm talking about? Yeah, that
Yeah.
section was put in mostly for the gas stations, which are all non-conforming in
Right.
the town. And when they wanted to switch out from doing so much mechanical work to having convenience stores, that provision covered their ability to
Do you
do that.
think, do we have an ability to?
It might
use that?
work here as well.
So there is that, we potentially could do that. We could allow them to build the parking area, maybe under that provision, and then you wouldn't have to necessarily make it a permitted use in residential districts.
Because in my mind, I'd like to help them on this piece of property, but I don't want to have to think about every issue that could come up in every piece of property in our residential area. We're just trying to help this specific piece of property gain their
I think
goals.
that we should explore that.
I think, yeah, I'd like to explore that because, you know, I mean, I think that parking situation at Modern Barn is quite a serious issue. I mean, their employees are parking, you know, are forced to park across 22 and, you know, run for their lives to to get into to work. And, you know, it's, you know, I'd really like to figure out a way to solve that problem for Modern Barn and to, you know, get this addressed without maybe making this.
I'll look into that. I can't answer it right now.
And when we have a pre-existing non-conforming situation, can't we deal with it by just getting a zoning variance?
A use variance? That's really not going to work. They're not going to meet the requirements for getting a use variance.
It's very difficult to meet the standards, all of which are mandatory. The only thing about doing it under that section that Adam referred to, is my recollection is that it's set up as a trade-off, where you have to give up something in order to gain, and that's why it worked with, you gave up the mechanical bays, you gained a convenience store.
Got
There was
There's some
a trade-off
reduction
there.
of the non-conforming to get.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Sure.
Talk to Adopt a Dog about whether there's an opportunity.
If they can trade something.
Is there someone here from there? Were they coming?
Yeah,
Oh, you are?
I'm Maggie Fallons from Shaver, Marwell and Hollis. You know, I think that the intention was to there is a need for parking now that both Adopt a Dog has, and it would certainly alleviate some issues at Modern Barn as well. But they do have, I mean, future hopes of being able to modernize their facilities. Not that they want to build out the entire property, but just being able to take what's there and improve it and modernize it, since a lot of the structures and accessory structures are pretty old, and they're also sort of right at the property lines as well. So, you know, it's nothing that they have the immediate plans for, the immediate finances for, but this would allow them to, you know.
And where do you think the range is for the FAR? Like, you know, they're upper and lower.
I think we proposed 0.35 because we didn't know, they didn't have any set plans in terms of the future expansion. But I think that the project engineer, Dan Holt, has looked at it and has determined that either 0.15 with excluding the runs or kennels, or a 0.25 would be more than sufficient to allow, you know, their...
Because in my mind, for this type of facility, the more indoor the better.
Right,
You know, the more the dogs are indoor, the quieter and the less obstruction there is. So
And
that's what I want to hear.
having those modern runs or modern kennels, those could fall under the calculations for structures, and that's why we thought that a little bit of a bigger FAR would be necessary given this use. But the thought would be to make it modern so that you don't have those noise impacts and other things.
Do we know what their FAR is now?
0.06.
But I don't know, does that include all the accessory, the kennels and...
It was my understanding that that's the number Dan gave us.
Oh,
It's my understanding that it does, but I'd have to go back and
I'm
check.
not certain.
Yeah.
So you basically came in applying for the max, because you really didn't know what they're going to do.
Right, and there are special permit criteria that if they did come in with this plan in the future to, you know, modernize their site, they would have to, you know, show conformance with all the criteria, and it would be evaluated at that point. But we realize that that's probably a maximum that we don't need at this point, so we are more than happy to scale that back.
Yeah, so if we give you a little more of a scale back number of what you think is still feasible, if they ever think they're going to build, if they ever get the money.
Right,
I
exactly.
know it's a big number, they're not sure
Right.
much into the future that's going to be, but that would be good for us to hear.
We did plan on submitting a plan prepared by Dan Holt that shows just, you know, a couple of exemplary.
But I wonder even if some of the modernization
of that facility could even be covered by,
It might be if they're trading off some of the more objectionable outdoor,
outdoor
I
and
think that's
indoor,
the perfect
more of a
switch.
setback, more
Right.
screening. We
Yeah.
might even be able to do it under that section, so,
Yep.
if you're very uncomfortable making it a permitted use in the district.
Yeah, I
which
don't
am
like
also
that.
concerned.
I just want to help this one piece of property
understand.
attain their goals, and then if they have the chance of improving and make that available, it'll make it less
Yeah.
obstructive from what it is
And
now.
that's
Be
the,
quieter, be better use.
and that's the intent, I think, of that
Right,
section.
we'd like to encourage that. You know,
Yeah.
if they want to put everything indoor in a new building, screened off just right, looking the way we want it to look, nothing better.
It's, you said 200 feet to the nearest house?
At least, yes.
Yes, it's a bit more.
It's surrounded by the church property.
Right, Martin Bar on one side, and the church on the other.
Right, across the street, you have Smith's Tavern complex, so.
And then
there
behind
aren't
it is the
any-
firehouse.
It's a really
Right, the
neat-
closest residences are really on, I guess, Brundage over there.
And Sunset.
Sunset.
Now, in terms of the overflow parking, how would you be using the easement that the fire department has to access the additional parking?
That's how it's drawn, yeah.
Do you have it, John?
Does the fire department have to consent to that, do you know?
We'd have to look at
Have a look at that.
that. I believe it's Modern Barn
Oh.
property, and it's the fire department.
Gives
that
has
has
the
the
easement.
easement.
Yeah, but they gave them
I don't know if it's an exclusive easement.
Yeah, I know. You know, it is for emergency purposes, so we definitely have to look at that.
Good. Yeah, I'm much more comfortable with just looking at this piece of property and changing it for the whole town, because we could be creating a big problem that all these things start popping up all over.
No, I think the criteria are pretty onerous to work with, so I don't think you would necessarily see a lot of applications popping up, but, and normally when it is a non-conforming use, you don't have a lot of leeway, and that's why.
But this might be a nice, you think
This
they would
is
be
their
comfortable to do
process.
it this way?
Okay, yeah, this
I'm not familiar with that code section, so I can't
You can
form
let
an
us
opinion
know
yet,
if
but
you're
Where's the
comfortable
easement
with
here
that
at?
change.
This is the vacant land. This is their proposed parking right here.
That's correct. Adopting
I didn't realize I had that much.
yeah, there's an entire acre that's
Yeah,
undeveloped.
okay. Don't they have something here? Do they have
If there's just a
fenced
fence
fenced
up
in?
there, that's
Yeah,
it.
there's, you
The
see.
dogs run around.
Dogs run
So
around.
this is the property line for Mom Barn?
Yeah.
And where's their, is this the driveway right here to get in?
This is the driveway.
Yeah, right here. This
Here's
is
the easement for the fire department.
Oh, so this will be coming in,
Right.
cars over here.
And
Yeah.
adopted,
This
so
is-
that's.
Oh, this is
Sorry, I'm sorry.
This
Firehouse,
one's
I'm thinking
outside,
facing
yeah.
this way.
This is
Okay, I got
outside.
you.
And this is that's the dog. That's the
Right.
building.
And who owns this one?
They
They do.
So this is all their land?
So their land
Yeah,
goes
they're
like
both,
this?
they have
Yeah,
these two
this-
pieces.
Yeah, they were merged
Mhm.
years
And
ago.
who, this,
This
That's
is the
proposed.
proposed parking.
That's
who owns
what
this right now?
They do,
Adopt.
adopt a dog.
What they use it now is,
Get 'em
they
in.
cut it down in the spring
Dogs just
and,
run around.
yeah.
So how many spaces is that, Adam, that they get in there? 89?
30 people.
30?
Wow.
34?
Oh, that's good.
Wow, that's great.
And that's actually a nice parking lot for the size of building they'd be putting on. It's almost, so if they do put a building, they have their pretty town parking.
Right, and they could, I mean, they need the parking now.
They do need it now.
so let's look at that.
Yes.
So, and do you know whether they're doing any medical procedures there now?
I don't believe that they are. I don't know if that would in any way come into their, best case scenario of future intentions if they had to do some emergency things there, but I don't believe that there's anything happening there.
Because you get into that, you start getting into the situation of disposing of
Sure.
animal parts.
Yeah.
So Adam, the potential proposal is that let's say the parking lot was able to be built. It's approved under the adopted dog property. Modern Farm customers would have access to using it.
Yeah, that'd
It'd
be a private
agreement
agreement.
amongst themselves. Modern Barn has no requirement to add parking, they've got the required parking. So it would just be whatever adopted, let's say they built additional structure or something, the parking would have to be adequate for whatever they added or built. They have no relation to Modern Barn, it's just a benefit, the side benefit to them.
And, the hours of usage would.
It's such a
complement
great
one another.
flex use.
Except that if they came in to build something on the adopted dog site, we would have to see what their agreement was with Modern Barn.
Sure.
Right.
And what hours they were able to use that overflow, because say at lunch, you could have a full parking lot from Adopt a Dog and people using it from Modern Barn and still have a problem.
Yeah, I think that can be worked out.
Yeah, that's what we're doing. I think it's more about the night peaks as
Yeah,
well.
the Friday night, Thursday.
And my understanding is we do encourage shared parking. And
Absolutely.
We do. It's actually something we really encourage here in town, so I like this use. It's the only way to solve your parking problems in towns.
So you'll explore that.
Yes, I think we should set up a meeting,
Sure.
to see if we can take advantage of that existing code section.
Great,
Sounds like a good fit.
thank you.
Any other questions?
I don't,